every time I pay my taxes, right? I write my my check to the IRS at the end of the year, and because I'm on 1099, I always say the same thing to my friends and my family. This would hurt less if it went towards something somewhat productive. If it wasn't just
Well,
if it wasn't just pissed away.
the Crucial Convo podcast. You could be anywhere if you're on this channel. Thank you for tuning in. To the Crucial Convo podcast. Welcome back to the Crucial Convo podcast. You are tapped in with your boy Coach Joe, and I got my man Keon Sinai back on the show. Thank you for joining me again. How you feeling, man?
Good. Listen, like I said, the only podcast I'll ever do right here. This guy, you know what I mean? Like day ones. I follow your podcast and I see your numbers and they steadily increase, right? And I think it's because, right, jokes aside, like when they say the name of the movie in the movie, because you have crucial conversations, right? And I think it's also, for most people, like a safer place to say, like when you said, who you voted for, and that was obviously, a lot of people disagreed with that. And it's okay. But you said it, right? And that's the thing, is we have to have more conversations, right? Because nobody wants to come, right? And that's the thing where it's like, listen, if everyone had the same opinion, it'd be boring, right? Certain things are empirical facts, right? Or maybe they're not, right? Because you have kids, and like you told me a story about how you had to like teach your kids, hey, listen, like men don't put on nail polish, right? It's like, well, some do. It's a mess.
It's a crazy world we're living in.
It's a crazy, right? So I don't know, but I can tell you.
Well, let's get into it. I want to ask you about a couple things. So, obviously, you're obviously deep into and have your put hand on the pulse of real estate in New York.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on with I was watching a little bit of the election, not the election, but the debates going on right now. Curtis Lewa, obviously Zoran Mandami, and then Andrew Cuomo. I was watching a little bit of it, and obviously, elections are literally next month. So let me ask you first, like, what are you sensing on the street as far as with real estate with the potential Mandami win? Because obviously of the three, he has the most, some would say radical ideas or extreme policy. So what are you seeing from the side of the property owners and renters, but mainly the property owners? I want to understand.
Yeah. Well, okay. Right. So, primarily, I'd say 95% of my business, I either represent developers or landlords or owners, whatever you want to call them, but I'm on the representing them side. Right. So the crazy thing is, like, nobody's ever going to play the world's tiniest violin for a landlord. Right. Like, I think that this guy running for mayor, the socialist candidate, he did a podcast with someone who said America deserved 9/11, right? And I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say it was, I can't remember, but you probably know what I'm talking about, right?
They asked him about it tonight, and I forgot the name of it too. But yeah.
And then on top of that, that same podcaster says that the blood should be filled with the streets of the landlords, right? Which is like a very aggressive statement, and I wouldn't expect a mayoral candidate to go on a podcast like that, right? But I think that, so the landlords and developers for years now have, and people don't really know this, right? But the landlords and the developers for years, their margins have been getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, right? And whether it's because they still have to pay for heating oil, or just because they have rent stabilized apartments where laws were made where they can only increase it a certain amount, and that amount does not keep up with inflation and taxes, et cetera, right?
Right.
So I think everyone is anxious, right? And they're anxious just to see what happens. Now, interestingly enough, on the landlord side, him getting in will actually drive rents higher, believe it or not.
How come?
Okay, so the reason that I don't want to mispronounce his name because I know he's very delicate. It's funny because I think it's but like everybody mispronounced my name. I have a guy I've worked for 2 years now. He called me today. And he's like, hey, Kian. And I'm like, hi. Like, I don't, whatever. And then some people take it as like, you don't want to learn about. And it's like, all right, take it easy. Okay. The free market rent will go up because he wants to freeze the rent stabilized rent, right?
Right.
So if you live in a building that is 20 units and 7 of them are rent stabilized, and the person moved in 1985 and was paying $400 for a 1 bedroom, then some years the city board has voted to not increase their rent. The max they've ever increased that person's rent is 3%, right? So let's just say they're paying $1,000 for an apartment that's worth five of a 1 bedroom that's renovated. You pay 5,000, right? If
Mm.
their rent gets frozen at 1,000, the landlord's taxes and sewage and the landlord's costs are still going up, but you can't even get that 3% increase, right?
Right.
So you have to make up for that somewhere else. Where do you make up for that? Well, for the non-rent stabilized tenants, I typically do a 4% increase. Now I'm going to do a 6% increase. And the answer could be as simple as, well, then if it's 6%, I'll move out. But what people don't realize, just like with when they banned the broker's fees, right, was overnight every landlord increased their rent at the same time. It wasn't one landlord that was like, oh, broker's fees are banned. You can't collect it from the tenant. Okay, I'll just pay you. Keep the price the same. Nobody said that. So we
Mm.
saw it's leveling out at about 7 or 8%. That rent went up because of that legislation, right?
Okay.
So the same thing will happen, right? It's like, okay, the mayor has frozen these rent stabilized tenants' rents at, let's just say, $1,000, right? So where do I have to make up for that? Okay, the free market tenants, because I can charge whatever I want. And every
Mhm.
landlord that has rent stabilized units will do that, right?
Okay.
Uh, Additionally, just forget about the landlords for a second. It really makes no sense because if you're paying $900 and you get a 3% increase, what is that, 25 bucks?
Right.
So this guy's going to save you 25 bucks a month. Like, okay, right? It's like, right. That's not a real savings. It's also ironic if you think about it, regardless of your political affiliation, that he lives in a rent stabilized apartment and he wants to freeze the rent, right? You know what? Okay. It's
I
like, if,
I I was gonna ask about that too because I heard that he was in a rent stabilized
yeah. Well, also
building.
it's like, it shows you how you can game the system because his parents are millionaires,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
It's like if I owned a Dairy Queen, right? And then I became mayor and said everybody has to eat a Dairy Queen once a week. It's a law. Show me, right? It's like I'm doing something to benefit something I own, right?
Right.
This is not a new concept, right? Like Kathy, the governor of New York, gave the Bills some insane amount of taxpayer money for a new stadium, and then you read that her husband's company will be operating all the concessions at said stadium,
Of course.
right? So you're like, okay, all right, and
Gotta be some perks in there.
yeah, it's a bipartisan issue, and it's like that's why everyone who's in Senate or Congress, whether they're blue or red, makes 175 grand a year, but is worth 20 million. Like,
Right.
right, the math ain't mathing, right? So, but that, yeah, everybody is anxious. Everybody's either holding off on deals, right? And a lot of times, I think it's an excuse, right? So last year, if business will be like, well, the election's coming up, right? This is more. This is more. There's going to be more shock value, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the most extreme person that will have been elected since, I don't know,
Probably ever.
since Koch messed up the city. I don't know, but or whomever, right? But it's like it's very interesting to see, that people are anxious. Not forget about landlords. Agents are anxious. Business owners are anxious, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
anxious, right? Because okay, if the rent goes up, people go out to eat less, right? Like it kills the community, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? So
It's a
uh,
ripple effect.
it's also, I think, another concern is, and I'm quoting someone here. I'll just say that they're very high up in the police, and he says to me, "Look, everybody's grievances aside, whether it's he won't denounce Hamas or Sharia law, whatever." He goes, "I'm also a little concerned because this man is 33, he's never had a real job, and now he wants to run New York City, right? You skipped a couple steps, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Skip all the steps, actually, right? So I think that's people's, genuinely their other concern."
Okay.
And I think that that's also valid, whether you love them, hate them, don't have an opinion about them. It's like,
That's
hey,
true. 33
a
is young.
33-year-old, yeah, whose resume is rapper, worked for mom, and then like became like an assemblyman or something, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that the code switching is also a little bit confusing, I think, to me
Yeah.
personally.
Well, let me
And
ask you:
yeah,
are the landlords? I heard something about the landlord. I heard something about property owners. And again, I don't know if this is for the large unit owners, but are people trying to sell, or do you think people will liquidate assets?
well,
Um,
look, there's always panic selling, right? And I was told by, yeah, I was on the air train, like because my wife was making me renew my passport to JFK, and I got a call from a broker.
Gotta
I
go
got a
get the
call from a
passport
broker.
stamp.
Yeah, and so I get a call from this very prominent broker who has a team, and whatever she says, I'm like, okay, good, right? Like we exchange feedback.
Okay.
And she says to me, her business picked up. This was like in early September. She said, my business has picked up. A lot of people called me and they're like, if this is going the way I think it's going, I want to be out by January 1, right? Now, also people, what's very frustrating, like I could pull up an email if I redacted it, I should have. Somebody made an offer below ask on a sale I have and the broker was trying to get me to take it. And he goes, with interest rates and the mayoral, right? Like everyone is using that, right? I know someone who asked for a 25% discount to buy an apartment. And they're
Hmm.
like, well, we're not in a rush. We'll just wait till after the election when prices drop. Now, I was fortunate enough to sit with our CEO last week for about an hour and a half one-on-one, which doesn't happen often, maybe once or twice a year. And he said something to me. He said, prices won't drop immediately. He said it'll take about 6 to 8 months for you to see prices drop. That was his opinion. I think there'll be like some initial shock value
Hmm.
where people just want to leave. But overall, it's interesting because you don't meet a lot of people. I'd say for every 20 people I meet, two support them, but I don't know.
Interesting, man. I actually saw a story, and I know you don't really cover Westchester County, but I did
I
see.
read about it. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like a whole,
Yeah, it was in the Daily Mail, and the broker said the top two reasons. Yeah.
and
So
they were
was
even saying that there was like people were offering over ask for some of these places.
I mean,
You know.
look, that makes sense. We saw it during COVID, right? Everyone rushed upstate. I'm from around Poughkeepsie, right? People were buying homes, and it was like, what? Like they were overpaying, right?
Yeah.
So don't I think in general, New York City has survived everything. Knock on wood, right? Is this guy going to be the death blow? No, but like COVID, 9/11, right? Like the city will always come back, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully, God willing, if it is a disaster, within 2 years from after he gets elected, people are going to be focused on the next 2 years, right?
Right.
So I don't think I don't think his policy will be as catastrophic on where people are concerned. It's not about, oh my God, I'm paying 50% tax now. I got to pay 52% tax, right?
Right.
I think where people are concerned is it's like you're pro prostitution. You talk about getting rid of you talk about getting rid of the NYPD gang database, okay? Right? You're anti-police and all this stuff. So I think people might be concerned about the quality of living, right? If you brought in $3 million last year and you live in New York, right? And you're already being taxed at 47%, and then it goes to
Yeah.
49. Don't get me wrong, it sucks. I hate it, right? But okay, 2%. Okay, right. I think it's more about the quality of living going this way while the prices are going this way. That's never a
Right.
good trend.
Right. No, I could see that. I can definitely see that, and I think that it's interesting because, I was actually listening. Now, I'll just say this right now. Like for me, I don't really think Cuomo is the best answer. I actually like Curtis Lewa. Um,
I've had the privilege of meeting him twice.
oh, you did? Okay. What'd you think of him?
The reason why he won't win is he's not a politician. He's just a real ass guy.
Yeah.
And first time I saw him, I was walking down Madison Avenue, right? I said, "Hey, you're that guy." Oh, like shakes my hand. Nice to meet you. I'm like, "Hey, man, cool. Yeah, nice to meet you too." And he's like, and he really practices what he preaches, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no. It was like those Hamas guys who were like, "We'll never surrender," and they were in like Saudi Arabia in a mansion, right? And the people are suffering. Like he's walking the street,
He's really,
right?
yeah,
Like
he's really New York.
he's really out there. And I saw him on 50, all within the last 3 years, and then I saw him by Essabagel in Midtown East on the corner, and he like remembers, oh yeah, I said. And then there were other people, white, black, Hispanic. Yo, you're that guy. They're dapping it up. Can we get a photo with you? He's like, yeah, what's up? And he's telling them, we got to clean the city up. There's got to be less crime. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what the issue is. He's not a politician.
Oh, so you
I'm like,
think so? So you think people? So do you think that the promises that Mandami's making are just going to be more shiny objects compared to Curtis Lewa? I think he's really telling the truth about New
but he
York.
hasn't promised anybody anything for free or whatever. He just writes. So
Correct.
I think it's a popularity contest, and I think even I saw today. This guy was defending his position on free buses, and he's talking about how like aggravated assaults on bus drivers will go down if the buses are free. And people were like, okay, but I don't want to be on the bus with someone who tried to stab the bus driver over $2.95 fare, right? It's
Right.
like, listen,
Right.
in theory, some things sound really good. Like in theory, I believe in world peace. I'm not trying to be ironic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, the buses will be free. Okay, now who's going to camp out on them all day if they're free,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
Right. And it's like we want to make, these people, the problem is they're so silver spoon, they're so silk stocking, right? Like when his idea about let's put all the homeless people in the subway, it's like, I was talking to a person who works as a doorman this morning, and he was like, yeah, I go home at midnight. I don't want to be waiting for the train and there's a bunch of home or the bus, right? Like,
Right.
okay, the bus is $3. He wants to make them free, right? That's not what is killing people's pockets. It's less if you buy a monthly pass, right?
Right.
So also the promises are sort of just like economically, right? Let's say you ride the bus 5 days a week, okay? 3 times 5 is 15, 15 times 4 is 60, $60 a month, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to save you $60 a month. That's not a real savings. You could do one thing on your tax return and save $60.
Yeah. It's funny when you say that, because like when you actually do the math of certain things, it almost becomes like, okay, these promises, not only will you not save a lot, but there are also things that are going to make things worse as far as the quality of life in the city.
It's like when boomers are like, if you guys weren't so busy spending $5 on a cup of coffee, you could buy a home. It's like, okay, let's just say 5 work days, $5 a day, $25 a week. It's $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. How many years do I have to not drink coffee for a down payment for a home?
Your whole life.
Yeah, man. And it's like, okay, let's just say I invested that money in the index and went up 8%. I'd still have to wait till I was like 50 to have enough for a down payment of a $500,000 home, right? Which is what
in today's prices, yeah. Today's price.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, yeah, you're right. It was the coffee, right? It's just so easy to point to something so trivial.
Yeah.
People in this society, everyththing is headlines. They don't ask follow-up questions. Like, well, how are you going to pay for that?
Well, let me ask you another thing about I have a friend of a daughter. Well, the daughter of one of our friends was involved in a lottery for like a lottery.
Housing lottery, sure.
Are there a lot of, how do the lotteries work? Are there a lot of lotteries as far as apartments?
Yeah, so every building that was built after 2010, if they want to get a tax abatement, they have to make, certain buildings are 20, certain buildings are 25%. Affordable housing, right? So it's like you apply for Section 8 and the lottery, right? So like if you make under a certain amount of money, then let's just say you make under 35 grand a year, then if a 1-bedroom in a brand new doorman building, let's say in Midtown, is 6,500, it's $900 for you. You have to win this lottery though, right? And you have to prove that you make less than a certain amount of money. It's very hard to win this lottery. About 12 years ago, the people who won this lottery actually sued because these buildings, these very expensive buildings, were doing a second entrance, like a service entrance, and said, okay, the 20%, they called it the poor door, for lack of a better term. Like, you got to go through the poor door. And they're like, no, we want to go through the regular door. And for me, right, as someone who's been broke and also been successful, like, bro, for $900, just say for a $6,000 apartment, to say you only have to pay $900, I'll go through whatever door you want me to go to.
That's
right?
wild,
That should be the answer, right?
That's wild.
That should be the answer. Like $900 a month for something that's costing the person above me and below me $6,000. I'll bring my own sink. I'll bring my right. Like, come on, like the amount of money you're saving, right? And
that's true.
Well, we don't want a separate door, right? And it's like, look, I think the problem is nowadays beggars can be choosers. Right? Like beggars literally can be choosers. Like, listen, if you can't afford it and you win this lottery and you have to, God forbid, go through another door, like it's not the end of the world, right? I understand the classism and the whole thing. Don't get me wrong. But also,
I see it from both sides. I mean, the idea of making the back
$5,000 less than your listen, if you were able to get 800 square foot, or let's just say 900 square foot 2-bed in Manhattan for $900 a month, and they said you have to use a different door, would you be like, nah?
Hell yeah, I go through the window if I had to.
Yeah, all right, crane me up, beam me up, right? So, but that's the thing. It's like that's
climb up the fire escape,
right? So there are these lotteries. You have to get very lucky.
You said that 25% of the units they have to allot, or
it used to be 20. It depends on when you get approval for the building, how many units you have, and what kind of tax break you want. Now, if you don't agree to make 20 or 25% of the units affordable in this lottery, this affordable housing lottery, your tax bill is like double, right? So it's essentially an offer that you cannot refuse from the city or state. So let's say, like I'm using 6,000 as a benchmark, right?
Yeah.
Let's say the average cost market rate of a 1-bedroom in your building is 6,000, right? Okay. That's with the 25% being affordable. If you gave the city the finger and said, I don't want to build any affordable, you'd have to charge 8,000 to get a profit instead of 6, right? And you're not going to do that, right?
Just the money, the math wouldn't work.
Yeah, because all your competitors are giving 25% to charge 6, right? So you'd have to charge so much more to make a profit. So it's an offer you can't refuse, right? Because you're not going to rent them at $8,000,
An
right?
offer you can't refuse. That's how they do it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, did she win this lottery?
She did actually. She won. It was a apartment in Brooklyn. So
Great. I mean, that's
mhm.
amazing. I think the issue is if you don't win the lottery or you're, like that's what's tough, right? It's like if okay, so if she makes a certain amount of money moving forward, I think they do like an affidavit every year. So it's basically incentivizing you to not
Yeah,
work hard. That is the tricky part, right?
right,
And that's the same thing with rent stabilization, right? It is incentivizing these people to stay where they are. Like, oh well,
right.
I don't want to move up because, and
Yeah,
I don't want to make more money because, right? It's like I have my $900 apartment, so I'm never motivated to make more than the bare minimum. And not everyone has to be a hustler. We talked about this last time, right?
yeah.
But when you have more people being fed a fish than people fishing, at some point something has to change.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact. I think that's kind of we talked about that last time too about where America is right now, and I think that so I think New York is very interesting. I mean, we have the governor's race next month as well, and I've been paying attention to those two people who are running for governor, Mikey Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli. But the New York mayoral race is interesting because I think New York there's no way around the idea or the fact that the cost of living is crazy in New York. There's just no way around it. But at the same time, it's like at some point we got to get to how do you actually deal with the cost of living. So I think there's a lot of
Agreed.
underlying
Agreed.
factors I think
Yeah.
we people aren't really
Also,
understanding.
correct me if I'm wrong. I'm only, you have a couple years on me, maybe two, but Manhattan was never affordable, right? I go back and watch movies from the 60s and 70s, right? So when they're like, we're going to make Manhattan affordable, I'm like, well, it was never affordable. It was always the most expensive place on earth, right? So what are we doing here, right? And I think it's, obviously I fundamentally disagree with the everybody gets a trophy mentality, but you have a lot of
Right.
people coming up going, well, okay, so I give this example all the time to people. I say if you are, a princess and you turn 16 and your dad is moderately successful, he buys you a white BMW 3 Series, right? And you grew up in a McMansion, right, worth $1 million or whatever, right? Then you go to college, you get your job in marketing or PR, whatever it might be, and then you move to the city and your parents need to subsidize you, right? And they say,
Hmm.
we'll put towards X, but you're not going to get that princess experience anymore. Like even to flex, right? To put a wall up in the living room of a one bed with a doorman because you need a doorman. The
Hmm.
specific caricature I'm talking about needs a doorman. It's still like, okay, we're each gonna be paying 2,600 each, right? And
Right.
they can only afford six. Their parents give them 1,000 a month, but they're not getting that Princess McMansion treatment because it is Manhattan. Even
Right.
like you have to be rich just to be poor here, right? You do,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's never been affordable. So to be like, well, we're going to make Manhattan affordable, and it's like, look, that's not what this is, right? Like you could move to Nashville, Tennessee. You could move to Charleston and live in an affordable city. But as long as I've been alive and the history I read, this was never the affordable city. This was always the city for the best and the brightest, right? It's like if we said we're going to make the NBA and the NFL easier to get into. No, we're not, right? Because there is, well, aside from LeBron and his son, there's no real nepotism. It's performance based. Like Michael Jordan's kid didn't get to go to the NBA because his dad is Michael Jordan. They were like,
Right.
"Hey, you're not that good. We're ending your career at college, right?" And and that's the thing is like Manhattan is very much a performance based city. Okay,
Well, that's a good point because
nobody
I think
moves
that
to New York City to relax, and if they do, it's because they're already rich as.
well, no, that's a fact, and you make a good point because a lot of people I think people have to differentiate Manhattan from the outer boroughs. So,
Sure.
I
Well,
think that
Brooklyn.
the outer boroughs are more expensive now too. And obviously, New York is an expensive place to live. New Jersey is expensive as well. So it's kind of like, from your experience, I mean, the outer boroughs. Do you think the outer boroughs are out of hand too, and Manhattan's just a different world, or do you
Well,
find
look,
people
I think
trying to
it's
live in
right.
Manhattan
Like
that just shouldn't live in Manhattan?
it trickles out. Like we've seen it, right? Williamsburg and Long Island City, right? If you
Hmm.
can't afford a doorman, like all right, for example, those buildings. If you ever drive on the FDR and you see that Pepsi Cola sign, you see all these towers, these glass buildings. Those are all buildings where, once again, even if you're rich in New York, you're poor. Okay,
Right.
so those are buildings where if you're going to NYU and your parents can afford to pay the 100 grand a year and they want you to have a doorman, and they look at a one-bed dorm in the West Village. It's median price is above $6,000. So they go, okay, live in Long Island City, right near the express train, and live it and still get that amenities doorman, experience, and then take the express train in the queue to Union Square, and then go to NYU, right? And those apartments are still $4,000, which means the parents have to make 80 times, which is $320,000 a year just to qualify. Okay, it's a
Right.
lot of money. And I think that with Williamsburg and Long Island City, you saw it. Now, certain areas, the prices went down. Like Bushwick was just too far from the city, right?
Yeah.
So they tried to Williamsburg, Bushwick, and it just didn't work out. But when you look at Long Island City, Williamsburg, Jersey City, where you used to live, Hoboken,
Yeah.
anywhere that's Manhattan adjacent, it's
Yeah.
spread out, it flood out, but that's bound to happen, right?
Right.
And that is how gentrification works. Okay, I
Right.
come from an area where my high school used to play Beacon High School, and when I graduated my senior year of high school, which was 2008, those homes were 100 grand. Those same homes are 1.2 million because it got gentrified,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, I
So
mean that's a
gentrification
good point.
gentrification has its positives and negatives. Everybody, and I mean everyone, views gentrification as like a negative connotation,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
it's never a good thing. But we all live in areas that were poorer at another time that
Right.
have been gentrified, Manhattan included, right?
No, that's a great point. I was actually talking about that a couple shows back about gentrification too, because in a lot of ways it has a negative connotation, but um, it all depends on what has happened from the gentrification, and it's not always bad. I mean, you have people coming in, you have more business come in, and you have more affluence come in. It doesn't always push everybody out, but I think that the cost of living in America is not just a New York issue anyway. So I think that's a good
Sure,
point.
100%. Yeah, but
Cost of living
Manhattan to
is what
me,
it is.
right? If you can, when we're talking about making a city affordable, where the slogan is, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere,
Right.
right? Okay, right. And once again, like I saw this article about how a lot of the Goldman Sachs recruits were complaining about the hours and how hard they have to work, et cetera. And I said to my buddy who works there, I said, look, like I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to seem like these guys who sell you courses, like hustle culture. But when you sign up to work at Goldman Sachs, don't
Yeah.
you know like what you're signing up for, right?
Right.
That's like me signing up for the Marines and being like, yo, they're making us do hella push-ups. It's like, well,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
you signed up for the Marines. Like
Yeah.
I would expect to work 80, 90 hours a week my first 5 years at Goldman. Not that they would have me, but you get my point.
No, I get it.
Right?
No, you know
So
what?
it's like, yeah, and
That's
it's
so
like,
true.
wait a minute, you're upset that Manhattan's expensive? Like, okay, are you upset that water is wet?
People are gonna say you're insensitive, Kian. They're
I'm
really
not, listen,
very
I'm not. I'm
insensitive.
not justifying it, but it's been
Nah, I'm
like
messing
that
with you.
since the no, but it's been like that since the beginning of time. It's
No, that's a
always
good point.
been highest earners, the whole thing, right? That's just how it's always been,
Yeah.
right? Maybe not certain areas. Like Bob Dylan grew up on was it Jones Street or Carmine Street, or he lived there when it was cheap, yeah, and then it got gentrified, right?
Yeah.
But even when he was there, the richest people in the world lived on the Upper East Side near Central Park,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? But that's a good point about Manhattan in and of itself. That's a great point to kind of zoom out and kind of look at that, because Manhattan in and of itself was gentrified. Long before you and I, when you go to 42nd Street, 34th, I mean, it was a shithole in the 70s. It was a play. It was it was really dirty. I mean, not in the sense of just dirty streets, but just dirty ass buildings, prostitutes, drug
Sure.
addicts in places now where it's like Disney and all the great stuff. So you're
Well,
right. I
it
mean, Manhattan
was
in and
now.
of itself
It's
changed.
now it's leaning back to the anyway.
It's going back there.
I don't know.
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I
look,
don't
it's
hang out as much, so I don't know.
no, I know. Yeah, it's
But it's a
that's the thing.
difference. To your point,
And then
it
and
has
then
been gentrified. So you're right.
Brooklyn Heights is actually where the oldest money is because all the wealthiest people lived in Brooklyn Heights as they watched Manhattan become constructed, right? Get constructed. So like parts of Brooklyn have always been super expensive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Certain parts were gentrified, right? Jay-Z says on the story of OJ, like how he could have bought a building in Dumbo for like 2 million
Right.
and then now it's worth 25 million,
Right.
right? But instead he bought sneakers and V12 engines,
Right.
and he says like I wish I could take it back to the beginning. And it's funny because on a smaller level, I think we can all relate to that line. So like I've known you since I was 21, and it's like I used to have a lot more sneakers. Now I'm like, man, I should have invested that money.
Yeah.
Man, like I should have invested that money in Nike, which pays a dividend, than having 15 pairs of Jordans, right?
Of course.
Okay, but
being young and not knowing. But yeah,
oh
that's a
man,
fact.
yeah,
And you're right. The gentrification train, as far as investments, I mean, I've seen places, obviously in New York, New Jersey, since I've been here, Chicago. I mean, if you're on the right side of that thing, yeah, it's gonna be a great thing. But I think places have to gentrify. It just is what it is as
sure,
far as
yeah.
just getting better. You know.
Well, look at
So
if you look at like Madison Square Park, people used to say that that was like a heroin den, right?
right.
Now it is some of the most expensive real estate around Madison Square Park, right? Like
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos bought at 212 Fifth Avenue, which is 26 Broadway and Fifth, and the park is on like 24th, right? So, right, Tribeca, right? People used to say Tribeca was where the Wall Street guys went to buy drugs and for prostitutes, right? It was
Right.
close enough,
Right.
right? Okay, fine. But you watch it slowly come up, and then it was originally Flatiron that got gentrified. Then it's
Yeah.
Madison Square Park. Now, north of Madison, Nomad is one of the most, they put a Ritz Carlton there. I used to
Yeah.
show apartments there in 2017, and it was so seedy that when I would walk out, right, it was just a hole in the ground across the street. But yeah, they're putting a Ritz Carlton there, and people would just look at like, this guy will say anything to get a deal done, right? That is how far fetched it was. But
Yeah.
the Ritz came. There's a Whole Foods on 28th in Madison. There's an Equinox on 27th and Broadway. There's two places within 3 blocks of each other where they'll charge you $20 for the smallest gelato you ever seen in your life. Boom, right? So it just
Only like
happens,
New
right?
York could do it.
Yeah, I used to say as a line when I was trying to sell people on this area Nomad, which I don't have to sell them on anymore, but like pre-COVID, I was like, yeah, Cha Cha Matcha just went in. I was like, listen, once the matcha place goes in, that's when you know. That's when you know it's a
The black.
lock, okay?
Right.
Yeah, that's like the opposite of a recession indicator, right?
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's funny, man.
Yeah, no,
No,
it's the truth, man.
that's so true. I mean, I think going forward, and we talked about this before too. I think part of the problem is that there are so many people who are not kind of locked into the labor
Reality,
force. And what do you say? Locked into what?
reality.
Re- yeah. Well, that because here's the thing. I think that where people are going to be working and how they're going to fit into society. And a lot of this we talked about AI last time too, because I've
Yeah.
been keeping my eye on AI for two reasons. One, there's an AI bubble. A lot of people are talking about the AI bubble from an investing standpoint, and obviously they're
Okay.
talking about it as far as how it's affecting industry. So it's
Yeah.
even interesting because even in the last like literally the last like 5 years, I mean, a lot of the white collar jobs, the jobs we see Wall
Yeah.
Street, the financial jobs that are, the base financial jobs, those are getting taken over. What do you see? Do you see anything in relation to real estate as far as AI affecting it, good or bad?
The interesting thing about the AI bubble, right? So I saw a statistic today that the gains in the stock market this year have been 80% AI companies, right? And
Yeah,
I've seen that actually the numbers for, labor, certain fields, trucking, like all of those are recession type numbers.
yeah,
But we are essentially being propped up just by this AI bubble, right? And a bubble doesn't mean that AI is not the future and it's going to be useful, right? Because
right.
there was a .com bubble and we're all still on the internet. It wasn't like the internet went away. It was just the valuations that these companies were given in the billions
Yeah,
and billions and billions of dollars, right? So of course AI is overhyped. Of course it's a bubble, but nobody knows when the bubble is going to pop,
yeah.
right? But our whole economy, I've never seen more, and I'm sure you like would agree with this. Tell me if you're wrong. I've never seen more disparity between the stock market and the economy, right?
Yeah,
The stock
yeah.
market is like turned into a casino, okay? And
I would say during COVID it was kind of like that too, because I was
sure,
like,
but
oh,
it's
this shit is
just
not
yeah,
magic at all.
but it's just so everything is so speculative, right? I'm not
Yeah,
trying to be like
no, it's
there's
true.
no like stock will go down and there'll be no news about it, and someone will be like, well, like I think the best example of this was Apple. Apple reported a blowout quarter. They said this was our best quarter since Q3 of 2021 and whatever. And so after hours, I'm watching the stock go down, and
Right.
all the comments are like, they didn't talk about AI enough. It's like, dude, they're making money hand over fist. Yeah, but
Right.
they didn't talk about AI, right? And actually, this is very interesting, right? A big investor in Apple is Warren Buffett. And I
Yeah.
assume that Tim Cook has learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are just speculating that Apple is going to do what Buffett does, right? When the economy crashes, Buffett's got his cash pile and he buys companies that are very valuable for pennies on the dollar because they're in a
Yep.
pinch, right? They're saying that Apple is not wasting their time spending gazillions of dollars on AI because when it does crash, they'll just pick through the useful technology and buy it for way
And
less
buy
than it's
it.
being valued at right now because they can do that, right?
Right.
You're like waiting, it's like you're letting two people fight it out and then you'll knock out whoever won, right? They're already
Right.
exhausted, right? So, but the AI thing is scary for entry level jobs. I think it's scary that the scariest thing about AI, and but personally, I would say I'm not a fan. Right? I understand it's helpful, but when you see these studies coming out of MIT that people's brains are shutting down,
Yeah,
okay, like their brains, like we already have, we already have iPhones, right? We could do anything, like, and we human beings have the shortest memory span, right? Because if you really think about it, this thing has not existed for that long, right? Right? Like I couldn't when I was 17, 18 years old, I couldn't even check the score of
bro.
the game on my phone. Now I can watch it in HD. It hasn't been that
Literally,
long. We used to have
literally.
those Verizon phones. You'd accidentally hit internet and it would say connecting. You hit end, 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 end. Because
Yeah,
to get the internet on your phone, just to go to yahoo.com costed $20,
man.
right?
It was a big deal just to do. It was a big deal just to do email on a BlackBerry and just have be able to send emails, and it was
Yes.
all good. Like and you're
Yes.
right. You could not check everything instantaneously. So you're absolutely right. But I got another point on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And now with the AI, right? It's just it's not. If listen, people need to have some critical thinking skills, right? And you're just seeing these. By the way, kids are using AI. Like I didn't realize, like 16 to 19 to 20, they use AI for everything, and we don't realize that, right? Like
Yeah,
I had a Gen Z intern, and he had Perplexity, he had Chat GPT, he had some things I've never heard of, right? And one time I was like messing around with the lighting on this photo because the painters had left paint buckets in the middle of the room. He's like, oh, whatever. He uploads his Perplexity within 30 seconds. Here's a photo of it without the buckets. Okay, great, right? Like that is useful, right? Sure, right? But then people are using it to write essays and whatever. I mean, but the bottom line is, do you want to watch a movie that was written by AI? Do you want to read a book that was written by AI? No, because it doesn't have a soul and you can feel it. You can
well,
feel when it doesn't
that's
flow.
where I think it's getting really murky because even YouTube, I think, put something in place recently because you had all these faceless AI videos, and it was starting to crowd the content. And I'm like, okay, I was glad that they decided, I guess, and don't quote me, they decided to limit the amount of like faceless videos that didn't have
Yeah. Well,
actual
I mean,
things that they knew was AI, and it's like it's a
there
lot of the
there are
content is
there are
trash.
there are men and women, I don't know, that are creating fake AI OnlyFans pages, right? And like they look real enough, and they're getting
Yeah,
people to sign up for this content. Like that's,
yeah.
I think at some point there has to be some. I don't know. There's no legislation on crypto. There's no legislation on AI,
Well, yeah,
right?
crypto's another thing too. Yeah, but yeah.
No, but there's no like at some point there's going to have to be some legislation on AI.
Well, they got to get a grip on how far you want to use it. Because even to your point, I was thinking about, even with my kids, they're 9 and 8, or almost 10 and 9 at this point, and they don't use AI per se, but they can Google everything. And we just bought them a phone a couple of months ago, so they have their phone now. They can't really get on the internet on their phone, but they can Google everything on the laptop.
So
So
to Google something and read about it versus saying, "Hey, write me a paper," or like, "Hey, give me 5 ideas,"
sure,
right?
sure,
Like, I mean, yeah, like listen. We all Google things, then we read and we retain information, right?
yeah,
This
yeah, yeah,
is,
yeah.
yeah, like I'm not even trying to be a hater or unk, you know.
No, no, no.
Uh,
That's true. That's true. If you're
my
trying to
Gen
do
Z
something,
intern,
and
my
yeah, you're
Gen Z
using
intern
Chat
called
GTP to
me.
write it. Yeah,
Yeah, my Gen Z intern called me. He's like, "You're just unk,"
ain't that
because
he called a hunk?
he said Future was the best rapper and that Jay Z was trash.
Oh man, he's
So I'm
yeah.
like, nah, man, whatever. He's like, yo, you're just unk. You're old. He's like, nobody my age listens to Jay Z. And I'm like, okay, right. And it's all right. But my point is, he used AI for everything. These kids are just using AI to write their papers.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's just
whatever. I, it
that's
just,
crazy.
yeah. And I think that obviously corporations are all about AI. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Sweet Green is just trying to automate their whole system.
You said
So
sweet
they
green?
Sweet Green has a store in Flatiron that's using the robots to make the salad, right?
Really?
With AI. So it's like there's no people there. You go in and you can see the machine, scoop a salad, bowl, next, like assembly line, but with no
That's
humans.
crazy. I think there
Yeah.
were some other restaurants trying to do that, or were doing that. I know that I saw something. This was like a couple years ago where they were testing out this thing where it would make pizzas, and you could just go pick up a hot pizza with
Yeah.
it being made automatically or whatever. I think there's a place for it, as far as efficiency and things that we use that we like. I mean, I know even as far as creating content, there's been good things that help you
Yeah.
create content easier as far as editing, but I don't think you should create, to your point, I don't think creating content with AI, actually creating a book. Like if you're gonna write a book, oh, I'm gonna chat GTP the book or the film or whatever, it's just getting out of hand. So
Well,
I think that
There was a Drake Weekend song that came out 2 years ago that was AI, and look, it sounded okay, but the moment I found out it was AI, I was like, I don't want to hear
yeah,
this.
it doesn't touch you the same.
No, it's just listen. I'll tell you what. I don't want to watch a movie written by AI. I don't want to read a book written by AI.
Yeah.
I don't want to do right. I don't, and that's the thing is like we saw that movie with Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Spike Jonze, Her, right, where he was had the earpiece and he was talking to the software, and he was dating his earpiece. He was dating this AI chatbot, right? And it's like, who wants a society like that? I don't know.
Well, we're going in that direction, man, and I think that like I said, I think that the biggest problem, all this stuff is tied together. The affordability issue, I think, is also tied to the fact that we don't have industries where most people are going to be working in, because you know I was watching Curtis Lewa earlier, and he made a good point, and a lot of people talked about it. Most of
Sure.
the like if you look back in the 30s and 40s, 100 years ago, most of the jobs that people were willing to work, Americans were willing to work. They're not willing to work any of that shit no more. So
Nope.
Americans are not really willing. And the interesting thing is, there's a lot of things going on, and they're all coming together in an axis
Yeah.
to your the other part of it is that Americans want more. We want more and more and more things, but are willing to do less and less and less, and want to
Yeah.
do less and less.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that has a lot to do with it too.
look, obviously industries change, right? And I think that's right. So like these garment factories that are in Nomad and Flatiron, right? This gentleman who owns a building said to me, he probably doesn't remember saying this to me because it was like 2018, but we walked to the building where Bezos lives now, and he's like, I'd never live in this place because I remember what it was before and how gross it was, and it was a garment factory. And he said this one used to be, and he's pointing to the different buildings, right? There's a toy factory that is now 10 Madison Square West. They've added to it. It's one of the most expensive buildings in Manhattan.
Mm,
The 4040 Club used to be like adjacent next to it, which shut down.
yeah,
But he said to me, he goes, "This used to be a garment factory. This they used to sell, bootleg furniture out of this one, right? And now they're all tech companies, right? Or they're WeWorks or whatever." And he's like, "And in 20 years, 30 years, whatever long, it'll be something else, but the buildings will still be here,
right,
right?" So
right,
that's the thing is like it's unfortunately we're evolving at a rapid rate, okay?
yeah,
Because the kids who grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, they all had the same experience. They all went outside and played and had a television set. And at
right,
some point, the television set got a remote. You used to get up and change the channel. The concept was still the same, right? You go outside and ride bikes with your friends. That has all stopped.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know at what point it stopped, but there was consistency between the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, right? So we're going on 30 something, 30 some odd years
yeah,
where it's like I can say to someone who's 20 years older than me, "Oh, remember we used to ride bikes and play outside?" They'd be like, "Hell yeah," right? But
right,
if you say that to an 18-year-old now, they're like, "No," like the COVID era, like these kids
right.
just don't go and play outside. They don't use their imagination. So I'm not knocking it. I'm not pro or against it because I know everyone has their thoughts, but it's like, okay, we've evolved very rapidly.
Yeah,
Okay, like very rapidly. So what do we do? I don't know, but we have to now evolve. Like technology is now moving faster than humans are.
yeah, it really is. It's moving at light speed, and I think, to your point, that's a great point about as far as the kids' experiences. But I think that what people are going to do for work, I think, is the biggest question mark to me in the next 15 to 20 years. I think
I
people
have
will evolve.
9 tabs open right now. Probably not good for the human brain. Human brain probably wasn't designed to have 9 tabs open.
Right. I got like 10
So
open right now. Yeah.
what do you think that people will do for work moving forward? I'd love to hear it.
What do I think?
Yeah. So
I,
what do you think people will do? Like what will people have to transition to? Right.
so
Because
I
at the
think
same time,
people will transition. I mean, obviously we have more people in tech than we did before in the past, but I think outside of creating and whether they're directly creating it or the ancillary businesses that are involved in creating the technology we use that we consume, I just think there's not enough of those things to cover most people. I think there's a lot of people, and here's the thing. I think we talked about this before too, and I've covered this as far as industries people are looking at. They're looking at blue collar job, quote unquote blue collar job stuff like that. You have that part. You have the tech part. But I think most people fall into, put it like this. I think most people fall into moderately skilled, moderately skilled people who,
Okay.
there's some people who are specifically trained at a particular thing, and maybe that industry isn't changing for a long time, whatever it is. Whether it's a doctor, even lawyers, even the thing with lawyers are changing it, and accountants and stuff like that.
AI can write a lot of the basic.
AI can write a lot of that, but
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who are moderately trained at things. So in the future, there's not going to be enough things for moderately trained people. I think that they're going to everybody's going to have to be really specialized. It's going to have to start being like that. Or we have to get to a point where people are like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work the farm, or I'm going to do some things I wouldn't normally think about doing, because, you know, it is what it is. Like, I don't think that we should have dumped 10 million or 20 million illegal immigrants in the country in the last couple of years. I think that was a mistake. But there is an argument there that there are a lot of jobs that people will do that Americans who grow up in this country
But
just ain't don't want to do.
does
So
that like prolong the problem though? Like I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I just think the weird, I guess it's called a paradox. The weird paradox is that while people have never been, while there's never been more of a gap between the extremely wealthy and the extremely poor, at the same time, it's like never been easier to make money, right? There's people who have picked this up and just made videos. It's cost $1,000
right,
and become multimillionaires off it, which was something that was not able to happen in the past, right?
I agree
Now
with
it's
that.
kind of
Yeah,
like winning the lottery, let's be honest, to go
yeah,
viral and to build a career out of it. But you couldn't do that back in the day, right? There was all these gatekeepers. You could have been the funniest person in the world, but if some executive at HBO didn't like you, you were not getting an HBO special. And then nobody heard your voice, right? There's positives and negatives to everything. I think with what we're going to have to do moving forward with the jobs is I think that we will naturally evolve because I had to learn cursive. You had to learn cursive. They don't teach that anymore, right? And it's like they'll say when we were growing up, and I've seen stuff on social media, but it's like your teachers used to say, well, you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket. And they weren't wrong. Not only do I have a calculator in my pocket, I
you
have
got
everything. I got everything,
got a
right?
lot more than a
I didn't
calculator.
I didn't have my wallet today, and I was not phased by it because I just Apple paid my way through the day,
100%. Yeah, I don't even need my
right?
wallet.
So
Right.
it's like, okay, so or whatever. But yeah, we have to evolve, right? I think the other thing is that sure, there's a housing shortage, there's a housing crisis, but these boomers who are like, oh, my home's worth $2 million, okay, there are no millennials or Gen Zers who can pay for that, right? And
Right.
I always go
Right.
back to this story when I was a kid. I would collect basketball cards, and I used to buy the Beckett, which would tell you what they were worth because
I remember the Beckett. Yeah,
we
I used to
didn't
do baseball
have
cards. Yeah.
we didn't have the internet. No,
Right. I didn't
all
know
right.
you were old enough to have a Beckett. I wouldn't even have thought you had a Beckett. I remember a Beckett.
I had the
I'm older
basket.
than you.
Yeah, and like I'm looking at, it, I'm like, damn, a George Gervin signed card or whatever, right? Iceman.
Yeah.
Um, I just remember that being the most expensive card, right? But I used to say to my dad, right? I'd be like, hey, I got this card. The Beckett's. I bought the pack for $5. The Beckett says it's worth $120, right? And he would always say to me, if you find someone to give you 60 for it, take it, right?
Right. Right.
Because something is. I know this sounds like a very. This statement sounds so stupid, but I think it's so profound. Something is not worth as much as someone is asking for it. Something is only worth as much as someone is willing to pay for it.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
these boomers, right? And I'm not trying to single out boomers or all these older generations who are like, I bought my home for 2 packs of juicy fruit and 100 grand, right? In 1978, and now it's worth $3 million. Okay, put it on the market and see if you get $3 million. Go ahead, because you're not going to because nobody has it, right? And
Mm.
to further that point, in the last 2 years, according to Realtor.com, more homes have been delisted in the last like 20 years, right? And to delist it essentially means I put it up at 2 million.
Yeah.
Nobody made me any offers at 2 million, so I took it off the market. I'm going to keep it, or maybe I'm going to
Right.
rent it out, right? So we are becoming a renter nation,
Yes.
right? But there's plenty of factors that go into that. But these homes aren't worth as much as like these people think they are, right? Because it's only
Yeah.
worth as much as someone's willing to pay for it, and there's nobody out there to pay for it.
Well, that's a
So
great point. That's a great point because I think that is part of, and a lot of people don't actually talk about that point of it. The fact that yeah, it's supply and demand, but it's like you have the supply, but people can't afford the actual supply, and that's going to be part of the reset. Everybody talks about a crash, but I think that is part of a reset to kind of reset
there's
what
got to
people
be something.
work. Yeah,
There's
because
got there's got to be something, right? Yeah, and I think that more and more, I've also read that more and more younger people are actually turning to the stock market because they're like, okay, I've saved up 50 grand. That's not enough for a down payment, but I can invest in half of that
right.
into a safe stock or whatever it is, right? So things are changing. We are definitely becoming a nation with no middle class. I think that's abundantly evident and clear, and I think that's very sad. People, I think that we are in a second I think that we are in a second gilded age, right? There's like a thin gilding, a layer of gold. There's people that are making money, right? People
Yeah,
who are heavily invested in the stock market, but everybody else is suffering.
yeah,
And I don't think that that's one president's fault or not another president's fault.
right.
I don't think that's the case. I think it's just been going on this way for a long time. And both sides are just grifting, looting
Oh
from
man,
us.
the grift is crazy all the way around the
Yeah.
board, and you're so right because I think people want to that point. I think people want a quick answer. They want That's why people gravitate to like maybe a Mandami who's promising things, and I think that the danger in that is people have to understand these issues that are going on with affordability, healthcare, jobs. It's not something that is a quick fix. It really is not. And that's just a great point. Let me ask you a question though, because when you were talking about housing for a minute, we're talking about
Sure.
affordability and inventory. So, do you think that major corporations should be banned from like buying single family homes? I know
You're talking about like what
obviously
BlackRock or Blackstone
BlackRock and
does in
so on.
middle
Yeah.
America. So that answer is the short answer is yes. Okay, but do you want to know why that's the short answer? Oh, did I freeze? Okay. Do you
No.
want to, all right. The selfish answer is no. And I'll tell you why the selfish answer is no,
Hmm.
because those people who work at BlackRock and Blackstone buy and rent apartments from me. No. Yeah, man.
I was gonna say it might not be the most popular thing to say yes or no about, but
Ask me how many BlackRock and Blackstone employee apartments I've rented. Tons. They're the only ones who can afford it. They're making 4, 5, 600 grand a year. All right, but no, but yeah. Listen, of course. Listen. I think the problem is that it got to a certain point where we just sold out the whole country, right? I do believe that that shouldn't be allowed because it's turning us into a renter nation. There should be
or at least
legislation.
limited, right?
Just like there should be legislation that China cannot own farmland in the United States. They're an enemy. Why are they buying up so much farmland? That's concerning,
Yeah,
right? But they're selling it at a premium, so they don't care, right? We've sold the whole country out essentially at this
right.
point, right? It's like everyone's in it for the grift, everyone's in for the loot, right? De Blasio and his wife can't account for like $900 million that were supposed to go to Thrive NYC, a mental health initiative,
Wow,
and I thought it was 90 million until someone said, no, 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 it's 900 million,
nine
right?
hundred million. Wow,
Hundreds of millions of dollars. You can fact check
billion.
that. They just can't account for the money. Okay, right? Eric Adams had his side chick on payroll for 250 grand a year, right? And she came
Yeah,
out and was like, "I loved him." It's like, yo, you got a no show job. Shut your mouth. Right?
and she's got
Your
her.
health,
Well, she's like, I got to put my book out now.
yo,
So
your health benefits are probably crazy, right? You're an employee of the government, but that's the thing is, it's like, and then I genuinely in my heart of hearts, whether it's left or right, I don't believe that somebody that grew up with a multimillionaire privileged background actually can relate to the struggle of people who didn't grow up with that background, right? And I'm not okay. Fine, let me rephrase. I don't think that someone that grew up with a multimillionaire background, right, whether it's Mamdani or you can name a Republican that grew up wealthy, when they say I'm fighting for you guys, I'm working for you guys, they don't really know, right? They
yeah,
don't know. They don't actually know, right?
right,
They're basically like theater. It's like political theater, right? This guy's
right.
like, I'm fighting for you. I live in a rent stabilized apartment. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I've been staying in my mom's $2 million apartment in Chelsea. It's just easier to get around in Manhattan when I stay in that one. It's like, what? You know what, right? You know what I mean? Like, come on, man, right? Like they just all are in for the grift. Like they're like the
Yeah.
guy who passed the broker fee ban. His father was Jay-Z's entertainment lawyer. And
All
he's
right.
like, I'm
Yeah, I remember that.
with
Yeah.
the people. You're not with the people, you know?
Right.
Um, and that's the thing is that we don't have anyone that leads by example. You want to know who leads by example? Curtis Sliwa, Look at Curtis
Yeah.
Lewa. He's polling at 3%.
I
Okay.
know it's wild. Listen, I was very, very impressed by Curtis Lewa because I mean I've listened to him before, but just on the campaign trail now, listening to how candidly honest this guy is. Candidly honest. And it's crazy. I
You
can't
can't.
even
Haven't you ever heard the
understand.
saying? You can't run on the truth.
Apparently not. Apparently
You
not
can't. You
because
can't run on the truth.
I'm like anybody who's listening. I don't know. You know what? Maybe I'm getting older, and because to me, I've always been a logical guy. So for me, I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, if you're telling me the truth, even if there's some good things and some bad things in there, I'm gonna be actually if there is good things and bad things in there, I'm more ready to believe you. I'm more likely to believe you because telling me things are gonna be great and you're gonna do everything and it's all gonna be great has to be a lie. It just don't work.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
so I think that you said earlier that Americans were detached from reality. So maybe that's what it is now. We're so detached from reality and we buy into all these narratives and we think that yeah, it's everything that's going wrong must be Donald Trump's fault, or it must be
Yeah. Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
else's fault before him.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Well, also, like, yeah, listen, I definitely consider myself, I guess, when it comes to social ideas, not fiscal stuff, like very liberal. I don't care. We've talked about this. We
yeah,
grew up in New York, whatever. I don't care what people do. I don't care who you see or who you kiss or like, who
yeah,
cares, right? But at the same time, we're also, if you grew up in the 90s, right? And you had a hero or an icon or you looked up to someone, right? They had a level of talent, they had a level of skill. Okay.
100%.
Now the Gen Zers are looking up to people who got famous for doing a dance poorly on TikTok, right? Or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So, it's like who are our heroes, who are we looking up to, right? All these people who got rich quick who have no talent, right? And in the 90s, whether you were an actor, right? Now they're putting like influencers in movies to get people to go see them, but they can't act. Okay. So
Horrible.
we've totally lost the plot on that, right? And I think not to make it racial, but like who are we taught to look up to? Like the schools now are like, yo, everybody was bad. There are no human beings are flawed by nature. All great
Yeah.
men are flawed, right? White,
Right.
black, it doesn't matter, right? And it's like
Right.
there's this line on Jay-Z's album where he goes, Al Sharpton in the mirror taking selfies. How is him or Bill Cosby supposed to help me? Right? Like, how am I supposed to look up to these guys? Right? One is a federal informant who is like a race hustler who sold his people out, Sharpton, right? And then I think we all know what Cosby was doing when he was lecturing said community on morals and principles, right? And even for me, it's like people always ask me, like, because I won't shut up about Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, but it's like I genuinely believe like these are the people you should look up to, right? Like, yeah, they're capitalists, they're billionaires, Michael Bloomberg, right? But what
Yeah.
did they do when they got rich? They gave back. What does Warren Buffett say? Warren Buffett says, yeah, I paid 23 billion, whatever it was in taxes last year. It is a privilege to pay tax in this country because I made this money on this system. So I want to pay it back. I want to give my fair share. Warren Buffett comes out and says, I want to pay my fair share of taxes, right? Bezos doesn't do that. Zuckerberg doesn't do that. All of these tech guys, all the tech millionaires and billionaires, they're like a different class, right? I don't know how to explain it, but like these old heads, whether it's Bloomberg or Buffett, it's like Bloomberg donates something like 4 billion a year to something crazy,
Something
right?
crazy. Yeah.
And it's like, all right, right? Not all billionaires are bad, right? But these tech billionaires are the ones that are like evading taxes and right. You look at Buffett, right? Same home since he was like 25 years old, right? And
Yeah.
I know that's a little uncharacteristic, right? But you
Yeah.
look at Zuckerberg, right? These people are like, they are evil, okay? Like, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but they do evil, Dr. Evil shit. Do you know that anytime a home comes up within like a half-mile radius of where Mark Zuckerberg lives in California, he has an LLC shell company buy it. So for the half-mile
I've heard
drive-in
that.
radius,
Yeah.
all those homes are owned by him, or
I
the
heard that.
evil
Yeah.
shit Bezos does. Bezos moved his residence to Florida to not pay income tax. Then he started selling Amazon shares. And that's where there's a certain line, there's a certain point, right? Where you're
Yeah.
like, listen, man, whether Bezos paid, 5 billion, right, over 10 years in taxes or 7 billion, it is not going to affect his life whatsoever. Now, the $2 billion makes a major difference. Now, the problem
True.
is these guys are avoiding taxes for many reasons because they're greedy, they're sociopathic. But every time I pay my taxes, right, I write my check to the IRS at the end of the year, and because I'm on 1099, I always say the same thing to my friends and my family. This would hurt less if it went towards something somewhat productive. If it wasn't just
Well.
if it wasn't just pissed away. Like if I saw that
Right.
kids in public schools were getting like a real lunch, or something. It's like, but all it does, they introduced congestion pricing to get into Manhattan to offset the cost for the MTA. And then they
Mhm.
announced, oh, we're raising the fares too.
Of
It's just all,
course.
it's like,
Anyway,
it's like, wait a minute. I thought that's what the congestion tax was for, right?
well, you
Where is all
you
this money going? Where's the
you made two good
accountability?
points. You made two really good points. What you just said,
Yeah.
two really good
Yeah.
points. One, because I think that that's part of the conversation. One, there are situations where you have ultra rich who aren't paying taxes and they're evading
Yeah.
it. And U.S. tax law was made to screw around. They
Right,
made
like
it for
Trump
you to
won the
do that.
election. That's why Trump won the election because he said, "Yeah, right." And Dave Chappelle talks about this. Hillary goes, and he didn't pay taxes, and he grabs the mic. Yeah, I didn't pay taxes. You know who else who didn't pay taxes? Any of her donors. They all use those loopholes. She's been in government for 40 years. Tell her to close the loopholes.
Of
And that
course.
was like a turning point, right?
Yeah.
Where Dave Chappelle called him an honest liar. Where he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I don't pay taxes, but the system's designed. I didn't design the system."
Yeah.
And look, Trump has done nothing to change the system.
Well, he's not going to. But you know what? Honestly, that's the thing. Republican, Democrat, none of them are going to really do anything to change the system. And that's why I said you made a good point because what's happening now is that we're a country of narratives. So we all
Yes.
cling the
Yeah.
narratives. So there's a
Yeah.
narrative of everybody who's rich is the problem. And then, like you said, there's a lot of rich people who pay a shit ton of taxes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or just like they want to give some. They're trying to help society in some way, right?
Well, but
Albert
the thing
Einstein,
is
right?
that
Yeah, yeah.
no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I'm saying like it's like the Buffetts and the Bloombergs, like that older old school generation where you see that they say we should give to charity, right? Buffett has
Sure,
come out and said I'm giving 95% of my worth, which is I think it's like 80 billion to personal net worth, 80 billion
sure,
dollars to charity. Okay,
right.
he said my kids are going to get a little bit, not too much, and the rest is going to charity. Okay, right? And it's like if you read what the average Gen Zer thinks or even knows about Warren Buffett, they don't. They know about these streamers, right?
Yeah.
These streamers who are worth 20 million, or they want to be like Zuckerberg or whatever. And it's like none of these people are really setting a good example. We don't really have these role models. I don't know. I
Well,
definitely
I
feel
don't
like
think they know. I think the narrative is that, and I'm assuming I could be wrong, but I think the narrative is that Warren Buffett, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, they all fit in the same category because within
yeah, which is
politics, they
not
just
true.
say all these are all rich people. And let's say Zuckerberg isn't paying his taxes. I think young people assume that Buffett isn't paying his taxes either.
Sure,
You
sure,
know,
yeah.
so there's an
Billionaires are
assumption
evil.
there.
Yeah, billionaires are evil except Taylor
They're
Swift.
evil, yeah, and I think that's the problem. So it's just like, well, we need to make sure the rich are paying their fair share, and then the other side of the coin, what you said a couple of minutes ago, was also the fact that you talked about you wish your tax dollars were going somewhere good.
Don't
So,
you? Like,
well,
wouldn't
I
you have?
do, but that's
I
the
think
reason.
everyone would have a less harder time paying tax if we just didn't see so much government waste. If we saw some
Correct.
of it going towards good use, right? Instead, it's like, now we're going to give free needles.
But
Okay,
you know
or
what
yeah,
though? But that's part of the reasons why I got a little more conservative as I got older. Because when I
sure,
was younger, I was like, I used to just listen to, I was more of a hardcore liberal, just thinking, oh, they're not paying their fair taxes. I remember going to Occupy Wall Street, all that shit in 2011. And I remember that time, like I remember
yeah.
that, going down to Occupy Wall Street, and I'm like, oh, this is the revolution of the world and all this stuff. But one thing I had to realize is that yeah, there are a lot of places where tax dollars, whether they're coming from the rich, and let's be honest, I mean, the rich still do pay a lot of taxes. When you
Well,
look
the top one, we talked about this, in the top 1% in New York pays 52% of the
at
tax, right?
100%,
If you're here, right? So,
100%.
which is like, okay, if these people leave, who's going to fund these programs, right? We have to
100%.
have, and a
Even
lot of people are
even
like, they
federally.
won't leave, they won't leave. It's like, okay, but we gotta create also like the wealth has increased so significantly, right? And I think I don't mean to keep knocking certain people, but I think it was Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren that for years were tweeting like the millionaires, and then like starting like 2018 when they both wrote books and got rich, they're like the billionaires because they became millionaires,
I
right?
know exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And it was like all of a sudden it was like, oh, I don't know,
People
right?
didn't realize that though. I don't
Yeah,
think
and look,
most people caught that.
maybe listen, like like these career politicians, right? They've never had a job, right? They
No,
went from some silk stocking school, right? Oh, I went to Harvard, then Columbia, and then I ran for Senate, and something was like they haven't experienced what normal
not at all.
people have experienced. Okay, like I don't think we've ever had a president that was poor. Obama didn't grow up poor.
No, he didn't. But a lot of people think he did. But you know, see the interesting thing about that is also the fact that there is tax dollars that go places that are not allocated correctly. So that's one of the things that
Yeah,
that's one
most
of
of
the
them.
things, most of them,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that made me more conservative because I start to realize I'm like, oh, this money is actually it's not going to the right places. It's skimmed. You remember in Casino where the
Skimming from the top.
where,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
the mom was
yeah.
like, you gotta watch skimmers. You gotta have guys to watch the skim. You gotta have
And what have
even
those get people watching those
right,
guys to make
yeah.
sure they don't skip.
Even the skimmers are skimming off the skimmers, or you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
even the
yeah,
guys
yeah.
who are watching the skimmers skim. So that to that point, that's the part I think
And
that
the envelopes were getting smaller and smaller, being
they were
sent
getting
back home.
smaller and
And that's
smaller.
and and in this case, the envelope of cash is the subway we ride. It's the streets we
Correct.
walk through. It's the right. It's like okay. It's like the quality of life is getting smaller and smaller because there's so many hands in the pot. And I think a great example of this was like they wanted to build an outdoor bathroom in San Francisco, right? And it cost like $2.5 million and took 6 years by the time it got through all the government bureaucracies, right?
Right. Right.
And I think Bill Maher talked about it on his show, and it was like it took less time to build the Golden Gate Bridge than it did to get through all this red tape to build an outdoor bathroom, and you ended up spending $2 million. There's a contractor that probably could have done it for $200, not
Easily.
200, but you know what I mean, like
Right.
150
But still,
grand,
yeah.
right? Whatever, right? But it was like, oh, we have to go through this authority, we have to go through that authority. We're going to bid on the government contract, right? There's bid rigging, there's all this stuff, like,
Yeah.
of course, right? But the people at the end of the day, it's the people who get screwed over.
100%. And we don't, and I think people don't really see that. And that's the other side of the coin outside of just saying the rich need to pay their fair share. I think that's the line of the Democrats and liberals, and then the Republicans are just saying we need to cut and we need to save money. And I think that there's truth in both.